The rain fell gently from the dark sky, turning the street into silver rivers of water. A young alien girl stood there, her clothes wet, her small hands holding a bag that looked far too heavy for her fragile frame. Her large, glowing eyes searched the road, but there was no one else. She was alone. When the human man passed by, he almost didn't notice her. He was returning home from a long day, his steps heavy, his mind full of ordinary worries. But then he heard a voice, soft and broken. "My mother died today." The words stopped him in his tracks. He turned, shocked. The girl looked up at him, her lips trembling. "Can I spend the day with you, human?" she whispered. He froze. The request was strange, even frightening. Who was she? Why had she chosen him out of all people? The street was empty, the night quiet, and yet her presence filled the air with a heavy silence. For a moment, he thought about walking away. She was a stranger, and not even human. Her pale skin had faint markings that glowed faintly in the rain. She was clearly from another world, another people. Taking her in could mean trouble. But then he saw her eyes. They were not just alien. They were full of grief, of pain so deep it made his chest tighten. She looked like a child who had lost everything. "Where is your family?" he asked slowly. "I have none," she said, her voice cracked. "Only her. And now she is gone." The man swallowed. Something inside him refused to let her stand there in the cold rain. He sighed, then nodded toward his small house at the end of the road. "Come," he said quietly, "just for tonight." Her eyes widened with a faint hope, and she followed him. As they walked, he kept glancing at her. She walked like someone used to hiding, her steps quiet, her head low. She didn't speak again, only clutched her bag as if it held her entire life inside. When they reached his home, he opened the door and let her step in. The warmth of the room washed over her, and for the first time, her shoulders relaxed just a little. She looked around as if she had entered another world. "It's quiet," she whispered. The man nodded. His house was small and plain, but compared to the streets outside, it felt safe. He offered her a seat near the fire. She sat slowly, her eyes shining in the flickering light. He noticed her shivering and brought her a blanket. She wrapped it tightly around herself, clutching the fabric like it was the only comfort left in the universe. "You shouldn't be alone out there," he said finally. "I know," she replied softly, "but no one wants me. They said I bring bad luck." The man frowned. Bad luck? He wanted to ask more, but something in her trembling voice told him now was not the time. She had already lost too much today. Instead, he simply sat across from her. The fire crackled between them, filling the silence. The girl looked into the flames, and tears rolled down her cheeks. She didn't try to hide them. And in that moment, the man realized something. Letting her in wasn't just an act of kindness, it was the beginning of something much larger. Something that would change both of their lives forever. The fire burned softly, filling the room with a warm glow. The alien girl sat wrapped in the blanket, her glowing eyes fixed on the flames. The human sat across from her, unsure of what to say. Her sudden appearance in his life felt like a storm, quiet outside, but powerful inside his chest. After some time, she whispered, "Thank you for letting me in." Her voice was small, like a fading echo. The man nodded, but kept silent. His thoughts were racing. She was a stranger, an alien child. Letting her stay was risky, but the way she looked at him, lost, broken, made it impossible to turn her away. He finally asked, "What is your name?" She hesitated, then said, "Leora." The name sounded soft, like a song, but the weight in her tone told him it carried sadness. "And you?" she asked timidly. "Daniel," he replied. For a moment, silence returned. Only the fire spoke. Then Leora looked at him with wide eyes. "Will you send me away tomorrow?" The question struck him like a blade. He hadn't thought that far. His plan was only to give her a roof for one night. But seeing her face, her trembling hands clutching the blanket, he realized how fragile she was. If he sent her back into the cold streets, what would happen to her? He tried to answer carefully. "You can stay, for now." Her lips curved into the faintest smile. For the first time, her face looked less heavy, almost childlike. But then her expression shifted again. Her eyes grew wet, and her voice cracked. "Everyone I meet leaves me behind. Please, don't leave me too." Daniel felt his chest tighten. He wanted to tell her he couldn't promise such a thing. He was just one man, living in a small house, fighting his own battles in silence. But the words never came. Instead, he leaned forward, his tone firm. "I won't let you stand in the rain again, not while I'm here." Those words, simple as they were, felt heavy in the room. They were more than kindness. They were a promise. Leora lowered her head, tears slipping down her cheeks. But this time, they were not only tears of pain, they carried relief. She whispered, "Thank you, Daniel." He stood up, moving toward the small kitchen. "You must be hungry. Let me make something for you." Her ears perked up. Hunger had been her shadow all day, but she hadn't dared to ask for food. She only nodded, watching as he moved around the kitchen. He made her a simple meal, bread and soup. When he placed it in front of her, she hesitated, almost afraid to touch it. But when she took the first bite, her whole body seemed to soften. "This tastes like home," she murmured. Daniel watched her quietly. Every bite she took felt like she was stitching herself back together piece by fragile piece. When she finished, she leaned back in her chair, her eyes heavy with exhaustion. "Can I sleep here tonight?" she asked softly. Daniel nodded. "You'll be safe here." Safe. The word echoed inside her. She had almost forgotten what that feeling was like. As she lay down on the small bed he offered, Daniel sat near the fire again. He stared into the flames, his mind restless. Something about Leora told him this was not a simple act of kindness. Her mother's death, her strange words, her glowing skin, they all pointed to secrets he didn't yet know. But tonight, one thing was clear. He had made a promise, and breaking it was no longer an option. The night stretched on, quiet and heavy. Rain tapped softly against the window, but inside the small house, the fire still glowed. Daniel sat in his chair, unable to sleep. Across the room, the alien girl, Leora, lay curled on the bed he had given her. The blanket was pulled up to her chin, but her body trembled even in sleep. Daniel's eyes stayed on her. He had expected her to rest peacefully, but instead, she twisted and turned, caught in dreams that seemed more like nightmares. At one point, her lips moved, whispering words he could barely hear. "Mother, don't leave me." The sound cut through him. He turned his gaze away, staring into the flames. He told himself she was only a stranger, that he shouldn't feel this much for someone he had just met. But his heart refused to listen. By morning, the rain had stopped. The air was fresh, but the silence of the house felt deeper than before. Leora sat up slowly, her eyes tired but alert. She clutched her small bag tightly as if she feared it might vanish. Daniel greeted her with a nod. "Did you sleep?" She shook her head. "This place, it feels safe, but it is so empty, like a graveyard." Her words startled him. He glanced around his home. The walls were plain, the shelves half empty, the table scratched and old. He had grown used to the silence, but hearing her say it like that made him realize how lifeless it really was. "Maybe that's why I stayed out there for so long," Leora whispered. Her glowing eyes scanned the room. "This house doesn't feel like it belongs to the living. It feels like you are only waiting." Daniel frowned. Waiting for what? She didn't answer. Instead, she hugged her bag tighter. For the first time, Daniel noticed how heavy it seemed for someone so small. He asked gently, "What's inside?" Leora's body stiffened. She looked at him with fear, then quickly shook her head. "Nothing. Just things." Her voice told him otherwise, but he didn't press her. He could see the fear in her trembling hands, and he knew she wasn't ready. He tried to change the subject. "Are you hungry?" She nodded. He prepared food again, simple bread and tea. This time she ate more slowly, her gaze wandering across the room. "You live alone?" she asked. "Yes." "Why?" Daniel hesitated. He didn't want to tell her the truth, that he had lost people too, that loneliness had become his only companion. Instead, he shrugged. "It's easier that way." But Leora shook her head. No, it's not easier. It just hurts less when you think no one will leave you again. Her words felt like a mirror held up to his own heart. He stayed silent, unsure how to reply. When she finished eating, she stood and walked around the house slowly. She touched the shelves, the table, even the window. She was quiet, but her eyes held a sadness that was impossible to miss. This house is like me, she said at last. Empty, alone, waiting for someone who will never come back. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. He wanted to deny it, to tell her she was wrong, but deep down he knew she was right. Before he could speak, she turned to him and asked in a trembling voice, "Will you leave me too, Daniel?" Her question was sharp, almost desperate. He saw her fear, the same fear that haunted her since the night her mother died. He shook his head slowly. "I don't know what the future holds, Leora, but I will not send you back out there. Not now, not ever." Her glowing eyes softened, and for a moment the empty house didn't feel so empty anymore. The morning passed slowly inside the little house. Daniel tried to keep himself busy, chopping wood and fixing things that didn't need fixing, but his eyes always drifted toward the girl. Leora sat near the window, staring outside as if searching for someone who would never return. Her small bag still rested at her side. She never let it go, not even for a moment. Daniel noticed, but he didn't ask. Something inside him told him that whatever was inside that bag was tied to her pain. By midday, he decided to cook. He had not cooked for anyone else in years, but today felt different. Today, he wasn't alone. He placed a pot over the fire and started making stew. The smell of vegetables and spices filled the air. Leora turned her head slowly, her eyes wide as if the scent itself was pulling her from her sadness. "What is that?" she asked softly. "Food," Daniel replied with a small smile. "Real food. Not the dry stuff you find outside." Her lips parted slightly, almost like she wanted to smile but didn't know how anymore. She inched closer, watching his hands move as he stirred the pot. "Did your mother cook for you?" Daniel asked gently. For a long moment she was silent, then she whispered, "Yes. She used to sing while cooking. She said food carries memories." Her voice cracked on the last word. She quickly wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, but Daniel had already seen the tears. When the stew was ready, he poured it into 2 bowls and placed one in front of her. She held it carefully, almost as if it was something precious, not just a simple meal. She took a small sip, then froze. Her eyes closed, and for a moment, Daniel thought she might cry again, but then her shoulders relaxed. "It tastes like warmth," she said quietly. "Like someone cares." Daniel swallowed hard. He wasn't used to words like that. For him, food had always been just survival. But to her, this meal was more than soup. It was proof she wasn't alone. They ate together in silence. The fire popped softly, the spoons clinked against the bowls, and for the first time the empty house felt alive. Halfway through the meal, Leora whispered, "My mother told me to run. She said people would come for me, for what I carry." Daniel froze, his spoon halfway to his mouth. He looked at her, but she avoided his gaze, clutching her bag tighter. "What do you mean?" he asked carefully. She said, "They would kill me if they found me, that I must protect it, that I must find someone I can trust." Her words sent a chill through him. Suddenly, her presence in his house felt far more dangerous than he had thought. Whoever killed her mother might come searching. Daniel leaned forward. "And you trust me?" Leora finally met his eyes. For a moment, silence filled the space between them. Then she nodded slowly but firmly. "Yes," she whispered, "because you didn't leave me in the rain." Daniel felt his chest tighten again. He had no idea what kind of storm he was stepping into, but looking at her trembling form, he knew one thing: he couldn't abandon her now. When they finished the meal, Leora gave him the faintest smile, a fragile one that looked like it might break at any second, but it was there. And in that fragile smile, Daniel saw something he hadn't seen in years: hope. Night had returned to the little house. The fire flickered low, casting long shadows across the wooden floor. Daniel sat in his chair, sharpening an old knife, though his mind wasn't on the blade. His eyes kept drifting toward the alien girl, Leora, who sat quietly near the fire with her small bag clutched in her lap. He had noticed it since the first moment she walked into his home. She never let go of that bag. Even while she slept, her arms wrapped around it as if her life depended on it. Tonight, curiosity gnawed at him stronger than ever. "Leora," Daniel said finally, his voice low but steady. "What's in the bag?" Her glowing eyes lifted toward him, wide with fear. She hugged it closer to her chest, shaking her head. "You don't need to know." "I've given you food, shelter, and a promise," Daniel replied gently. "But if there's danger coming for you, I need to know what we're up against." For a long moment she stayed silent. The crackle of the fire filled the space between them. Her lips trembled, and finally she whispered, "If I show you, you won't be safe anymore." Daniel leaned forward, his gaze firm. "I'm already not safe, Leora, not with you here, but I chose this, so trust me." Her eyes glistened with tears, but his words seemed to reach her. Slowly, with trembling hands, she opened the bag. Inside was not food, not clothes, not toys. Instead, a small crystal orb rested on a folded piece of cloth. The orb glowed faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. Its light filled the room with a strange living energy. Daniel's breath caught. "What is that?" Leora's voice broke as she answered. "It's the Heartstone, the last gift of my mother. She said it carries the power of our people, that if it falls into the wrong hands, entire worlds could burn." Daniel's grip tightened on his knife. Suddenly everything made sense. The fear in her eyes, the hunters she spoke of, the reason her mother had died. This was no ordinary child. She was carrying something powerful, something people would kill for. "Why give it to you?" Daniel asked carefully. "Because I am her only blood," Leora whispered. "She said I must guard it until I find someone who will protect it. Someone who will protect me." Her gaze lifted to him. "She said I would know them by their kindness." Daniel's chest tightened. He hadn't asked for this. He was just a simple man, living in silence, running from his own past. And yet here she was, looking at him with trust so deep it frightened him. He exhaled slowly, trying to think. "Does anyone else know you have this?" Leora shook her head. "Only the ones who killed her. They searched the house, but she hid it in my hands and told me to run. They will never stop, Daniel. They will come for me. They will come for this." The weight of her words pressed down on him. He could almost hear the footsteps of enemies already marching toward his door. He set the knife down and looked at her firmly. "Then they'll have to go through me first." Her eyes widened. "You mean you'll keep me safe?" Daniel nodded. "I promised you once, didn't I? I don't break promises." Leora's tears spilled, but this time they came with a fragile smile. She closed the bag and held it close again, but now her shoulders looked lighter, as if sharing the truth had freed her. Outside, the wind howled, and Daniel felt a chill crawl up his spine. Somewhere out there, hunters were searching, and they would not stop until they found her. But as he looked at Leora, trembling yet brave, he knew one thing: his life was no longer his own. The secret she carried was now his burden too, and he was ready to fight for it. The wind outside grew restless as darkness settled over the land. Daniel's small house, usually silent, now felt like a fragile shell against the storm. Inside, the fire flickered weakly, shadows stretching long across the wooden floor. Leora sat close to the flames, her arms wrapped tightly around the bag that carried the Heartstone. Daniel paced near the window, his senses sharp. He couldn't shake the feeling that eyes were watching them from beyond the trees. Her confession earlier still rang in his mind. The Heartstone, the power it held, the enemies who wanted it. Leora's voice broke the silence. "They will come, Daniel. They always come at night." Her words made his chest tighten. He turned to her, his voice steady. "If they do, they'll find me waiting." But even as he spoke, he knew he was only one man. He had no army, no weapons beyond an old rifle and a hunting knife. If soldiers came, he would be outnumbered. Still, something inside him refused to give in to fear. The first sign arrived with the sound of crunching leaves. Daniel froze, listening. Beyond the wooden walls, faint footsteps moved in the darkness. They were careful, but not careful enough. Someone, or something, was out there. "Stay here," he whispered to Leora, picking up his rifle. He moved to the window and peered through the small crack. At first, he saw nothing, only the dark forest and the swaying branches. But then, a faint glow appeared between the trees. Lights, moving slowly, searching. Leora's hands trembled. "It's them," she whispered, her glowing eyes filled with terror. Daniel felt a chill run down his spine. He closed the window quietly and turned to her. "They don't know where we are yet, but we have to be ready." She shook her head. "You don't understand. They can smell the Heartstone. They will find us." As if her words summoned them, a sudden knock echoed against the door. Loud, sharp, demanding. Daniel raised his rifle, his body tense. "Stay behind me," he ordered. The knock came again, followed by a voice, strange, deep, and commanding. "We know the child is inside. Give her to us, human, and you will live." Leora gasped and clutched the bag tighter. Daniel's jaw tightened. He didn't answer. Moments later, the door shook violently as someone tried to force it open. Leora whimpered, tears spilling down her cheeks. Daniel steadied his breath. He couldn't let fear control him. He had made a promise. "Listen to me," he whispered to Leora. "If they break through, you run out the back, hide in the trees. Don't stop, no matter what." Her head shook violently. "No, I won't leave you." "You must," he said firmly. "I can hold them long enough." But before she could reply, the window shattered. A shadowy figure reached inside, its hand long and sharp with claw-like fingers. Daniel spun and fired his rifle. The blast echoed in the night, and the figure collapsed outside with a scream. The house fell into chaos. More footsteps rushed from the trees, more voices shouting in a language Daniel didn't understand. The air outside glowed with torches and strange lights. Daniel's heart pounded, but his voice was steady. "Leora, go!" She clung to his sleeve, her eyes wide with fear. "If I run, they will take you." "Better me than you," he growled. "Now run." Tears streamed down her face, but she obeyed. She slipped through the back door into the night, clutching the Heartstone. Daniel turned back toward the front, his rifle loaded, his knife at his side. He knew the fight ahead was nearly impossible, but in his chest one thought burned stronger than fear. If this was the night he died, he would die keeping his promise. The night was alive with shouts and the crunch of boots on wet ground. Leora ran barefoot through the back door, her small legs carrying her as fast as they could. The Heartstone weighed heavy in her arms, but she refused to let it go. Every sound behind her told her the hunters were close. Inside the house, Daniel fired again, the sharp crack of his rifle splitting the night. He wasn't aiming to win, he was buying time. He knew Leora needed every second he could give her. "Run, girl," he muttered under his breath, reloading. "Don't look back." But Leora did look back. From between the trees, she saw shadows swarm the little house. Strange weapons glowed in the dark, sparks flying as they smashed against the wooden walls. Daniel stood in the doorway like a stone, firing, swinging, refusing to step aside. Tears blurred her vision. She wanted to scream, to go back for him, but her mother's last words rang in her ears. "Protect it, Leora. Protect it at all costs." Her feet carried her into the forest. Branches scratched her skin, roots caught her ankles, but she kept going. Behind her, the sounds of battle grew louder, then faded as distance swallowed them. But she was not safe yet. Two figures broke away from the main group, chasing her into the woods. Their strange armor glowed faintly, their eyes burning with hunger for the Heartstone. Leora stumbled, nearly falling, but then she heard a familiar voice cutting through the night. "Down!" Daniel roared. She dropped instantly, and an explosion of light tore through the trees. One of the hunters screamed as Daniel's shot struck true, the blast echoing. The second hunter lunged, but Daniel was already there, slamming into him with the force of a man who refused to break. Leora's heart raced. You followed me!" she gasped. Daniel wiped blood from his cheek, his chest heaving. "I told you, I don't break promises." More shouts echoed behind them. Reinforcements were coming. Daniel grabbed her hand firmly. "We can't fight them all. We need to move. He led her deeper into the forest, every step quick, every sense alert. The woods grew darker, but Daniel seemed to know the path. His grip on her hand was strong, steadying her when she stumbled. "They won't stop," Leora whispered breathlessly. "They'll keep hunting me." Daniel glanced down at her, his jaw tight. "Then we'll keep running, until I find a way to end this." The chase continued. Branches whipped against them, the sound of pursuit never far behind. Twice Daniel stopped a fire, each shot slowing the hunters but not ending the threat. Finally they reached a river cutting through the forest. The water rushed fast, cold and wild under the moonlight. Daniel looked at Leora. "Can you swim?" She shook her head, fear flashing in her glowing eyes. He didn't hesitate. He lifted her into his arms, the heartstone clutched between them. "Hold on to me." Without another word, he jumped into the river. The icy water swallowed them instantly, dragging them downstream. Leora clung to him tightly, her cries drowned by the roar of the current. Daniel fought to keep them above water, his strong arms pushing against the pull of the river. Behind them, the hunters reached the riverbank, shouting in frustration as the current carried the pair away. When they finally washed up on the far side, gasping and shivering, Daniel dragged Leora onto the muddy ground. Both of them collapsed, exhausted, but Leora's eyes still glowed faintly in the dark. She looked at him trembling. "You saved me again." Daniel gave a tired nod, his chest rising and falling like thunder. "I'll keep saving you, Leora, until this ends." Above them, the forest was silent for now, but they both knew it was only the beginning. The forest was quiet again, but the silence carried weight. Daniel and Leora sat under a tree, their clothes damp from the river. The girl shivered, clutching the heartstone close to her chest. Daniel kept scanning the trees, his rifle ready, his ears sharp for the sound of pursuit. "They'll come back," he muttered. Leora nodded, her voice low. "They always do. They never stop." Daniel studied her trembling form. She was small, fragile, and yet she carried something worth dying for. He was about to speak when the forest shifted. A faint hum filled the air like a storm without thunder. Leaves rustled though the wind was still. Daniel raised his weapon, his body tense. "Stay behind me." From the shadows, shapes emerged, tall figures in armor, their helmets glowing faintly with golden light. Unlike the hunters from before, these ones moved with precision, their steps heavy but calm. They carried spears that shimmered with energy, and strange emblems marked their chests. Leora gasped, her glowing eyes widened. "No, it can't be." One of the armored figures stepped forward. His voice was deep, commanding, but not hostile. "Princess Leora, daughter of the fallen queen, we have found you at last." Daniel's heart pounded. He glanced at Leora in shock. "Princess?" Her face turned pale. She shook her head, whispering, "No, I'm not." But her trembling told the truth. The leader of the armored figures lowered his spear and knelt. "By the Queen's last command, we are sworn to protect you. The royal guard answers only to your bloodline." Daniel felt the ground shift beneath his feet. The girl he had thought was just an orphan carried not only a dangerous artifact, but also a crown. She was not simply a lost child, she was heir to a throne. Leora hugged the heartstone tighter, her voice breaking. "If you serve the Queen, then why weren't you there? Why didn't you save he?" The leader's helmet tilted slightly, his tone heavy with shame. "We were betrayed. The enemy struck before we could return. We searched for you for days, but the stars hid your path." Her tears spilled freely. She looked away, her shoulders trembling. "She died alone because of you." Daniel stepped forward, his rifle still in hand. "If you're her guard, then prove it. Why should we trust you? For all I know, you're here to take that stone." The leader's golden eyes glowed from behind his helmet. "Because only the royal blood can carry the heartstone without being consumed, and she still lives." Leora's hand tightened around the orb, its soft glow pulsing with her heartbeat. Daniel couldn't deny the truth. When she held it, it seemed alive, safe. In anyone else's hands, perhaps it would have been deadly. But even so, he kept his guard up. "If you mean to protect her, then you'll have to protect me too. Because I'm not leaving her side." The soldiers looked at one another, their armor gleaming faintly in the firelight. The leader finally gave a slow nod. then you are bound to her fate, human, and her fate will not be gentle. Leora wiped her tears, lifting her chin though her hands still trembled. If you truly serve me, then help me stop them. Don't just hide me. Don't just call me princess. Help me finish what my mother started. The guard bowed his head. Then we marched together. Daniel stood beside her, the weight of his choice heavy but unshakable. For the first time, he saw not just a lonely girl, but a leader in the making. The hunters would return, stronger than before. But now, they were not alone. The Queen's Guard had arrived. The night dragged on, but the danger outside did not return. The Queen's Guard had set a protective circle around the clearing, their glowing spears humming softly, pushing back the shadows. For the first time in days, Daniel allowed himself to breathe, though his rifle never left his side. Leora sat close to the fire, her face pale in the golden light. Her hands clutched the heartstone as if it were part of her soul. She hadn't spoken much since the guards revealed her truth. The word princess hung in the air like a heavy chain. Daniel watched her carefully. She looked small, fragile, nothing like the image of royalty he had always imagined. And yet, when her glowing eyes lifted, there was something in them, a quiet strength that had not been there before. Finally, she broke the silence. Do you hate me now? Daniel frowned. Why would I hate you? Her voice shook. Because I lied, because I let you think I was just a girl. I didn't tell you who I really was. Daniel leaned forward, his tone calm but firm. You're still the girl I found in the rain. You're still the one who asked me not to leave her. That's who you are to me. Her lips trembled, and for the first time since the fire began, she smiled, small, fragile, but real. One of the guards stepped closer. Human, you do not understand. She carries not only the Heartstone, but the hopes of an entire people. To protect her is to place yourself in endless danger. Daniel looked at him directly. I already chose. I don't break promises. The guard's golden eyes studied him, then gave a slow nod of respect. Leora looked between them, her eyes shining. No one ever stayed for me before. Everyone either feared me or wanted something from me, but you stayed. Daniel's chest tightened. He wasn't sure what to say. He was no hero, no soldier of honor. He was just a man who couldn't leave a child in the rain. But to her, that had been everything. She leaned closer, whispering, when my mother died, I thought I would die too. But now, when I'm with you, Daniel, I feel like I still have family. Her words pierced deeper than any blade. He looked at her, seeing not just a princess or a burden, but a child who had lost everything, who was clinging to the only promise left to her. Without thinking, he placed his hand gently on her shoulder. Then let me be that family. As long as I'm here, you're not alone. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but she did not look away. She held his hand with her small fingers, gripping tightly, as if anchoring herself to his words. The guards watched in silence, their expressions unreadable beneath their helmets. But even they seemed to sense that something unspoken had formed between the human and the princess, a bond stronger than duty. Hours passed. The fire dimmed, but neither Daniel nor Leora moved far from each other. When exhaustion finally pulled her into sleep, she leaned against him without fear. For the first time since he found her, her breathing was steady, calm. Daniel sat still, staring into the flames, his rifle resting nearby. His arms stayed around her shoulders, steady and protective. He knew the battles ahead would be fierce. Enemies would come, stronger and more ruthless. But as he looked at the sleeping princess, he realized something important. This was no longer about promises or duty. This was about family, and family was something worth fighting for. The first light of dawn spread across the forest, turning the mist golden. Birds began to sing, but their voices could not erase the tension in the air. Daniel stood at the edge of the clearing with his rifle, eyes sharp. He knew today would not pass quietly. The Queen's Guard moved with purpose, their spears glowing brighter as the sun rose. They had felt it too. The enemy was close. The hunters who killed the Queen had tracked the Heartstone again. Behind him, Leora stirred awake. She blinked at the soft morning light, then looked at Daniel. Her voice was weak but steady. "They're coming, aren't they?" Daniel nodded. "Yes, but they won't take you." Before she could reply, the sound of marching feet echoed through the trees. Dark figures appeared, armored in black, their eyes burning with cruel fire. The leader stepped forward, his voice like a blade. "Give us the girl. Give us the Heartstone. Do this, human, and we may let you live." Leora's small hand gripped Daniel's sleeve, her glowing eyes wide with fear. She whispered, Please don't leave me." Daniel didn't flinch. He stepped forward, placing himself between her and the enemy. His voice was calm but filled with steel. "You'll have to kill me first." The leader sneered. "Then so be it." The forest exploded with chaos. The black-armored hunters charged, weapons raised. The Queen's Guard met them with shields of light, their spears clashing in bursts of fire and sparks. Daniel fired his rifle again and again, each shot cutting through the storm. When the bullets ran dry, he drew his knife, moving like a man with nothing left to lose. Every strike, every step, was not for himself, but for the girl behind him. Leora clutched the Heartstone, tears in her eyes. She felt it pulse with her heartbeat, as if it shared her fear and her hope. In a trembling voice, she cried out, "Mother, guide me!" The Heartstone blazed with sudden light, brighter than the sun. The hunters staggered, their dark armor cracking under the force. Daniel shielded his eyes, but through the brilliance he saw Leora standing tall, her small body glowing as if she carried her mother's spirit within her. The enemy leader snarled, lunging toward her, but Daniel intercepted him with a roar. The clash was brutal, man against monster. Daniel's blade cut deep, but the leader's strength was monstrous. Daniel fell to one knee, blood dripping from his arm. Still, he stood between Leora and death. "You're not taking her," he growled. At that moment, the Queen's Guard surged forward, their spears piercing the enemy's heart. The leader screamed and collapsed, the rest of his forces scattering into the forest. Silence fell, broken only by Daniel's heavy breathing. He dropped his knife, his body trembling with exhaustion. Leora rushed to him, tears falling freely. "You're hurt." Daniel gave a weak smile, resting a hand on her shoulder. "I told you, I don't break promises." She sobbed, holding his hand tightly. "Don't ever leave me, Daniel. Please." His voice was tired but full of warmth. "I won't. You can stay. Not just for a day, not just for tonight. You can stay forever." Her eyes shone like stars, her small arms wrapping around him. For the first time since her mother's death, she felt whole. And for Daniel, a man who had lived in silence and emptiness, he finally found what he never knew he needed: family. The sun rose higher, painting the forest in gold. The battle was over, but their journey had only begun. Together they walked forward, human and princess, protector and child, family bound not by blood, but by choice, forever.